Hello everyone and welcome back to Make Better Wedding Films, the home of new ideas for radical films about people in love. My name is Ben, I will be your host, and before we get into the show, we've got a couple of announcements to get through. First of which is to let you know that this episode is sponsored by MusicBed. MusicBed is the home for the best music for your films, hands down. They've got a huge list of incredible artists making absolutely banger music for you guys to use in your films. And they've got an awesome subscription package that you can basically sign up for and then forget about and just use whatever music you want on MusicBed and however many songs you want in your films. It's awesome. So yeah, make sure you guys sign up with the link below and use the promo code MBWF to get your first month free, and it lets them know that we sent you, which helps out the show. Secondly, this episode is sponsored by Love Stories TV. Love Stories TV is a huge online directory of wedding filmmakers designed for couples to get inspired and find the best wedding filmmakers for their wedding. Love Stories TV have hugely popular social accounts on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram that get thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views sometimes on their wedding films. So if you guys want potentially millions of eyeballs on your work, make sure you sign up for a Love Stories TV account and you can submit your films to be featured on their social channels. And if you get picked, they pay you to make social cuts. So it's a win-win-win basically. So yeah, make sure you check out the link below, lovestoriestv.com. Alrighty, that's it for the announcements. On to the episode. When you see a high heel shoe with a red sole, you know it's a Louboutin, or at least a knockoff pretending to be a Louboutin. This is an example of a brand signature, something that when people see it, the brand instantly comes to mind. Sharrone from Fiore Films is very, very aware of the power that a brand signature can have, and that is why whenever you see a wedding film that is entirely shot on tripod, you know it's Fiore Films. My name is Ben, and this is Make Better Wedding Films.
I actually fell into this. It wasn't. It wasn't anything planned. I worked in the fashion industry, and then after that, I was in e-commerce. So I was always in some sort of sales. And then when I had my son, I wanted to be home with him. I was a stay-at-home mom, and probably like a year. Yes, it was a year at his 1-year birthday. I always dabbled in the arts. As a matter of fact, I actually have like photos that I've shown over at Vision Quest and posted too. Like when I dabbled in photography and stuff like that, you could literally see that my style like kind of hasn't changed since then. Or my taste. I say taste, like my taste. I'm trying to find it on my phone, but I'll do that later. So yeah, I always did my husband and I kind of like did these like PowerPoint presentation things and like little shows for our family and for family gatherings. And when my son was a year old, we did something for his birthday party. My mother-in-law. All right, I'm going to make a very long story short. I started doing like montages and photo montages, and then incorporating video into them, like home video. And God, that's an untapped market. Like that's amazing stuff. It's so much work. But I was doing that, and I was doing that for like 40th birthday party. People would hire me for their birthday parties, anniversaries, whatever, kids' parties. And I started soliciting myself at the time. That was when people were like showing baby montages at their weddings. I don't know if you guys had that over there. Like here it was popular. Like at one point, they were showing their baby montages at their wedding. So I was freelancing for like DJs and videographers. And one day, one of the videographers that I was working for asked me to edit by the way, I started off on Microsoft Windows. What was it? Windows
Movie Maker.
Movie Maker. That's it. Yeah, Movie Maker. movie maker. And then I was using a program, but it was basically, it was a program more for like doing photo montages, but then you could put little clips of video in there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's how I started. And so she asked me to edit just a photo shoot of a bride and groom at their, they were at a park for their wedding. And I did, and I loved it. I'm like, oh my God, you have to give me a full wedding to edit. I'll do it. You don't even have to pay me, da da da. And so she did, and that's how I started. She actually introduced me to another videographer at the time, her friend, and the friend became Trish became one of my biggest clients. I then like started discovering this like more cinematic vibe of like videos. And back then it was specifically Cinematic Bride. So people here will remember and have been, are the OGs, would remember Cinematic Bride. It was Josh Smith. And so he was doing like Trash the Dresses. Did you guys do that back then?
Yeah. We've done a Trash the Dress where the bride went paintball shooting.
Yeah, that's more your style. So he had like, it was more kind of darker. He would have them in like dirty lakes, and very cinematic, very Ozark colors kind of thing. And I'm like, oh my God, we have to do this. And so I was trying to talk Trish into doing something like that. And I would edit it for nothing. Eventually she was like, leave me alone, go do your own thing. So I was like, oh, okay. So I did. And she's, she said it in the nicest way possible. We're still in touch. She's like my biggest. And her son, Jack, is the Jack that shoots with us. He's been with Fiore Films since day one. So if you guys ever see my stories, if you see, it's just always me and Jack. He actually started shooting for Fiore Films before me because I was an editor. I wasn't a shooter.
Oh, wow.
So I would send out the shooters and I would edit. And then slowly I just kind of like went out piece of the day by piece of the day and learned to shoot.
That's crazy. That's such a cool origin story. So for the people sort of living under a rock that may not have seen your work yet, in words, like how would you describe the style of Fiore Films? Because I remember when I first saw your work, I was like, holy shit, this has got to be the most unique style of wedding filmmaking that I've ever seen.
I think it's different style. It's not like it's a more of like a popular style here on the East Coast, I think. Here in the States on the East Coast, we tend to shoot more like that. How would I'll tell you how it's been described. It's been described as moody, dreamy. I like to call it intimate. I would describe our stuff like less than like opposite of epic. It's more kind of like intimate. You know what I mean?
That's an interesting way to describe, because often when people think of intimate, they think of like handheld camera up close. You're kind of like moving with people, but you've got a kind of unique and different approach to intimate. And you're right. You like, because your wide frames often use blur and foreground elements, and like I think tilt shift. You guys use like tilt shift lenses and stuff to like mess with focus planes, and you do all sorts of things to kind of like focus the viewer's eyes in on the couple. I imagine too, because you're often shooting in like busy urban environments and sort of like removing all that distraction and coming in on the couple. There's so many different elements about your work that I want to go in on, but I think I'm gonna sort of just start with probably the most identifiable element of your work, and that's your use of tripod. It's a tool in filmmakers' kit that everybody has, everybody uses, but they use out of necessity to film speeches, to film ceremonies. It's a kind of a begrudgingly used piece of kit, whereas for you it's a creative tool. So I would love to talk to your use of tripods and why you use them so extensively.
So the funny thing is that people assume I'm on a tripod all day, but I'm actually on a monopod mostly.
Ah.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I'm admittedly not a great multitasker. I multitask, but I'm not good at it. So especially at shooting, I'm not really good at, like, for instance, Jack, right? He'll adjust his tripod in like that. Jack actually shoots with a gimbal, and most people, a lot of people that I know can shoot with a gimbal, put the gimbal down, and then get on their, camera, whatever. I am not good at that. I actually used to shoot with a glide cam, a slider, and I would get nuggets of stuff out of that. And then slowly kind of started leaving that stuff at home. And then I realized how ridiculous I actually even looked. I wasn't using the glide cam properly, but yeah. So I'm on a monopod for a really, really good portion of the day. I'm so much more comfortable on a monopod, and I've actually been incorporating a little bit of handheld lately, but I don't know if if it counts, because like I'll stand still with the camera in my hand, so
Yeah.
it's
Still
not like
counts.
I'm moving. I don't know. Like I love a handheld look. I absolutely love it. I just feel that, like, for us, like we've kind of like developed this very static. I mean, I guess if you're watching our stuff, you don't realize, a lot of people don't realize that it's all static until it's pointed out to them.
I think the filmmakers would be aware of it. I think your couples probably, it's not something that your couples probably pick up on, but I think because filmmakers are used to seeing wedding films full of music, we're obsessed with gimbals, we're obsessed with like handheld movements. Like we look at all our footage, and all our footage is always moving. It's just this kind of like ADHD frenetic thing. There's like our footage never stops moving. But I think, like, when we've mentioned it before on the show around, sort of broad picture, the idea of creativity and how creativity comes from constraints, and the fact that you guys have sort of removed an element of camera movement, that's a kind of a creative constraint that you guys have, I guess, attached to your style of filmmaking. It's, I guess, just made you approach things like composition and directing couples just completely differently.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to be honest with you. There's times where I'm editing and I miss the movement. Like I'm like, oh, this, some movement here would have been nice. Some movement there would have been nice. And I've been thinking about that lately. So I've kind of been like zooming in, like in post. I feel like for me, like, I don't know, panning in post kind of looks a little strange to me. For our compositions and stuff. But movement adds another layer to films, for sure. And there's definitely, I'm admitting here that there's definitely places where I feel like some movement would have been nice here, because at that moment there was no movement in front of the camera.
Yeah, that's good to hear, actually, because you look at your work and you go, oh, they're nailing it every time. It must be so easy for them after, like, they've nailed their style, they've got this down pat. But to hear you say, it still is sometimes tricky and difficult is heartening for a lot of people, I guess, trying to find their style themselves.
Yeah, it's definitely, especially, I mean, think about it. Like if you're editing and you're cutting clips and putting them together, and there's no movement in the camera, like in any of the clips, you have to find proper moments that you're not just like looking at a static shot. You know what I mean?
Do you think that helps you seek out those moments a lot better by like taking away one thing to worry about, which is moving your camera so much? Do you think that helps you sort of seek out better compositions and capture more moments?
For me personally, yes. I'm definitely, and I'm pretty OCD. That's something that I need to work on also. But yeah, so composition, and like it's not always easy. in a live event to get that proper composition. So like on the spot like that. And so I'll find myself sometimes obsessing over, oh, if I was just like over just a little drip, like I need to be over, or, if I'm shooting toasts and, or speeches, and I'm shooting like, from behind guests, or even a ceremony, and like someone's top of their head is like at the bottom of my screen, I'll obsess over that. You know what I mean? Uh, and I'm trying to like teach myself, like, I'm trying to like control that a little bit. Like, don't move. Don't, don't move your camera. You know what I mean? Like, it's not gonna be as bad, like when you're looking at it in the editing room as it is when you're looking in your camera. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I suppose for you, like every time you like recompose, you start the timer over again. Like for people who are like on a gimbal or handheld, you can sort of slowly manipulate the camera,
Exactly.
and like your shot never kind of has to start from scratch. Whereas I imagine for you, if you do notice like a little twig going in your frame and you don't want it, you got to move it, and then you kind of got to start the timer again on like that's your shot begins then.
Exactly. But yeah, I've been, so, our older stuff, we were doing kind of like a lot, like some, like more tricks and reflections, and a lot of that stuff in the camera. And slowly I felt like, fads get old, or like if you're doing something too much, and you start to kind of like, you start to appreciate different things, on a wedding day, especially, as you get older, as you get more wiser, as you get, as you get more seasoned, the concentration is more on composition, on getting a pretty, on getting a pretty picture in the moment, not just of portraits, but of the real parts of the day. And here, the real parts of the day, our couples, those real parts of the day move fast. We have no control over those things. And so that, I think, is the biggest challenge, for us in our area, is to capture like actual moments of a wedding day in a creative, proper way, and get the moment. So I think that's where we shine. I had this conversation with Jack too. I feel like on days where it's just really a day of like a real day happening, there's not, most of our couples don't take too much time for portraits. They're like, okay, you can shoot us crossing the street, and that's kind of it. We want to have our wedding day, and I appreciate that. I would want to have my wedding day too. It's frustrating for us because all we think about is the edit. Like, oh my god, I need transitions. I need I need some in between shots. Some cutaways, some B-roll. But for them, they just want to enjoy their day, right? So I actually feel like we do better shooting on those days that like we just real things are happening. Not always. I mean, there's always exceptions. You know what I mean? There's always exceptions where not much is happening. It's not really, you know what I mean? You have those days where the toasts are kind of, short, or, there's not really much that you could use in the edit. Not speaking of their day, they're amazing for the couple, for their day, but in an edit, or the ceremony, kind of like, sometimes in the churches, the lighting is just like, oh, and we can't use lighting in churches here, our own lighting. There's always exceptions. You know what I mean? So on those days, we're like, oh, we need portraits. We need something pretty. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, there's I guess there's a lot of elements to your work that we've kind of like touched on here and there just in the last few minutes, but I'd kind of there's a few that I want to like just drill down to like a little bit more, and especially so there's definitely around how you guys handle your very controlled style filmmaking in the frenetic day of a live event like a wedding. But before we touch on that, I would love to just quickly hear you speak on going back to the removing the movement from the camera, and like what you guys look out for in terms of the movement in front of the camera. So like when you guys are setting up your shots and thinking of your composition, I think a lot of us have some of the elements of composition kind of like locked in our brain, like rule of thirds and like negative space and all these kinds of things. But how are you guys specifically looking for isolating movement, whether it's the couple, whether it's foreground elements? Like what are you guys kind of like looking out for on the day as you're kind of lining up your shots?
Are we referring to the to actual things that are happening that we don't have control of, or the parts of the day?
Maybe both. It's I guess it's around how you were mentioning, like you've got your sort of static style of filmmaking, of like arranging your camera, but if like everything in the frame is still too, it effectively becomes a photograph. So how are you guys like either directing the couple or looking out for natural movement that you can just kind of like work with as elements in your frame? Like what are some of the tricks that you guys look out for to add that movement back into your footage?
Right. So, okay, so that's easy. The parts of the days that we can't control, we just try to find a spot where, the visual in front of the camera is interesting angles, interesting lighting, hopefully. So like, and I'm speaking like, let's say at a bride prep where a bride is getting her makeup done, I personally don't really like to shoot things if they're not like nice lighting, or if they're not interesting and it's parts of the day that I don't need and are not going to be missed in their edit. So like and that's definitely a style thing. It's definitely a preference. Like it's definitely who your couple is and what they expect and what you know is important to them. So like parts of the day, for instance, of like makeup, if the bride is getting her makeup done in a bathroom and the lighting is gross and we can't kind of get the touch-ups by a window or something like that, I most likely won't shoot it. But but like our brides don't care. Like our brides don't care about that kind of stuff. Parts of the day that we can't control and are important, we just have to do our best to find like an interesting angle, or at least a solid, good composed shot, and let things happen. So it's also a matter of like kind of control and patience, and also knowing typically what the day is going to be like, and if you've been shooting weddings for a long time, you can kind of like foresee a lot of things happening, including the negatives. Like, oh, this guy's going to walk around. I know it. He's a walker.
I think that's a great point, because one of the underrated skills of a wedding filmmaker that nobody really talks about is the ability to anticipate a moment and being in the right place at the right time. And clearly you guys like do that really well.
Yeah, I mean, we do our best, and I think that's part of what makes, we're pretty fit, physically fit. So like a 12-hour day, I'm not hurting after shooting a 12-hour day physically. And I mean, unless like if I didn't have any sleep or whatever, being exhausted. But I think that like the most exhausting part of a day is, and it's something that Jack actually mentioned, and I'm like, you're so right, is we have to think ahead the whole day. We can't stop thinking ahead. From the minute we walk in to the time we leave, we have to be thinking ahead, and we have to be on point like the entire day. What other job is there really that you have to be thinking like 2 minutes ahead of what is about to happen, or anticipating, or kind of like, just kind of, you just kind of have to like know what is probably going to happen or what might happen. You know what I mean? It's I think that's the most mentally, like that's the most exhausting part of the day at the end of the day. Listen, wedding hangovers are real. It's a real thing. And I don't think that anybody, including my own husband, will never understand it unless you're shooting weddings, what it takes. But yeah, so as far as composition, there's at least two shoot. We kind of also we have a groove. We already know what we're in charge of on a day, and I think that that's kind of like that's such a great part of like having a constant like team, and rather than like always having to work with someone new. When you work together for a while, you kind of already know what the other person, we barely have to talk to each other during the day. And for different parts of the day, like for instance, portraits, we already know who's going to be on what lens, to get different focal lengths. And Jack and I have a very different style of shooting, but it works together for the style of Fiore Films. And so he's better on certain lenses, I'm better on certain lenses. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if I answered your question, because truly there's never really a plan of like how to set up the camera for a shot until we're there, So like for ceremony, for instance, we will check out the area for the ceremony and we'll go, okay, I'm going to be here, you're going to be there, and like look, and then like we'll stand in where the bride and groom will be standing and figure out composition there, and the composition for a third camera, where is the best spot going to be in that area. So those things are planned, hopefully. Sometimes not, but those things we try to plan. Other than that, there's things that we always do, on a day. So we already, like Jack likes to get like silhouette shot of the groom, kind of like at a window. And, certain parts of the day are like, it's like a given, you know what I mean? It's something that we just do. But yeah, well, those special moments, different moments it's just something that comes to mind, like when we see it.
That's interesting. I think hearing you talk about how you guys work on the day is interesting, because I think people might look at your work and think sort of like walk over here, set up the tripod or the monopod, and then like get the shot and then walk over here, compared to how they might picture themselves like carrying around heavy equipment and always moving and kind of getting physically exhausted. I think like hearing how you guys work, you're kind of like your mental like stamina and your intuition and your kind of like pre-visualization is on overdrive the whole day. Because in the way that I might see something happening and like whip my camera and I'm like already there, you guys kind of have to kind of pre-visualize everything even more than the average videographer, to make sure that you're already in the spot before something happens, because you're not as adaptable to things changing on you in the moment, because you're locked in for your shot like as it's happening. So that's, I guess, really interesting to hear that you're sort of, I guess, pre-visualizations on.
Yeah, so that's actually challenging for us. That's something that we always envy the photographer for those reasons, where something will be happening behind us, and the photographer can just whip their camera around and shoot it. Where we we're on sticks. It's like we have to level, we have to white balance, we have to we're not on auto, and we're mostly on primes. So it is definitely challenging for us. But where we shine is letting things happen in front of the camera, where photographers like have to capture one frame, and like one frame might be like where like we're getting like the whole moment. So it's like it's half a dozen of one. But yeah, no, it's definitely, our style is definitely there's a lot of challenges in the way we shoot, including like I said, like post, makes it's a little more challenging for post. And it has to be put together the right way. Static shots are not easy to kind of like put together,
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think we're used to our own way of working, and every time you like hear about how someone else does like the same job as you, but with their own unique style that they've developed over the years, it just makes you think about like, I guess makes you reflect on the way you work and the choices
Absolutely.
you've made on, for your own creative work. So yeah, it's really interesting to just hear those subtle differences and just the choices you've made. I mean, and because I think Andrew too had a question. He mentioned ahead of the time around like figuring out your unique style and how that all comes about. Andrew, do you want to jump in on that one there?
Yeah, I just, I think like it's great these days that we've got all these Facebook groups and we're also connected to community, because I know for us personally, when we started, we didn't really know any other filmmakers, wedding filmmakers. We didn't have any community even within our local city, whereas now we've got heaps of friends in the industry. But I think it's a double-edged sword in terms of like, inevitably people take bits of inspiration from the people around them, and the styles can sort of have a little bit of a sameness to them, whereas with your style it's the complete opposite of that. So I guess my question for that was around like any advice you can give people, in because this like wedding filmmaking is still such a young craft, like it hasn't been around that long, and there's still so much potential for it to develop into other things and different styles, like unique styles like yours. So do you have any advice for people about, it's a really cliche question, but finding your own style rather than just emulating what's already around you?
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like when it's the same thing. When we first started, there wasn't Facebook. We had Vimeo, and we were in a forum called WedFact, Event Filmmaker, which became Event Filmmaker. So that was like a forum that, like, you had to pay, you paid monthly to be a part of, and it was kind of like an exclusive thing, and that was amazing. I was so lucky to have gotten into this industry when I did, to be honest with you. For things like that, I mean, Facebook has its groups now, but it's like thousands of people in there, and it's not, this was kind of like more of like of an intimate group, that you had to, you had to be vetted to get into, and you had to actually be sponsored to even like be considered. So we were lucky to have that. But when anyone is just starting out, I think in any industry, you have the things that you've seen that you're inspired by, or the things that you do that you're inspired by. And when when you watch somebody's work, or you see something on TV or a movie that you like, you copy it. That's just how it is. You copy it. And I think now, to be honest with you, where I used to be like, oh, it's so easy now for people, because they just, you're exposed to so much, you can see so much. But that's a double-edged sword, because you can't find yourself because you're exposed to so much. You can't figure out, and so it's hard. It is hard, I would say, for people that are coming in, that they're seeing like all these videographers and all this work that they love, and they not already doing their own thing. So I think that it takes time for an individual to, they're going to copy. We all did. Everyone copies at first, and then you kind of like find your own kind of things that you don't always have to take it from weddings. I was in and I think you could tell in my films. I don't call them videos. I really don't call my stuff films, to be honest with you. And I call myself a videographer or an event filmmaker. I'm not. I know that I'm not a filmmaker. I was always very, very into music and fashion. And what I actually used to, and I tell the story all the time. I used to, when MTV like played music, I would record, like they would have like certain like slots for music videos, and I would DVR them, and I would run on the treadmill and just watch music videos and find inspiration from those things. And yeah, and listen, fashion and music is like it's a very big passion in my life. It always has been, and I feel like if you want, when when you watch our stuff, you can kind of see that. You can kind of see fashion and like almost kind of music video, like music. You know what I mean? It's like a style. You know what I mean? Like meaning like style, like fashion-y kind of thing.
Your frames are beautiful, and it's no coincidence, I'm sure.
Thank you. And it's funny because for the most part, like our brides like are very into fashion, our couples. So I don't even know if they like kind of it just maybe that they connect to that. It is very, very hard to find yourself and find your own niche, especially in it. Like I said, these days where there's just you're just exposed to so much. I think that maybe the best advice I would give is kind of like step away from watching wedding videographers and try to, watch things that you're actually interested in, or maybe photography. Like I follow fashion photographers. I love fashion photography. I actually I follow like fashion photographers that do like headshots.
Oh, yeah,
and just some really interesting stuff. But yeah, that's my biggest advice is to walk away from wedding videos for a bit. And even if like you're a person, for instance, like some people are into movies that are very, dark. And then there's some people that are into movies that are very quirky, that would be my best advice. And then kind of take what you have found, and if the inspiration that you found, or there's videographers that you find that you just love their work, take some of that and incorporate it into those other things that are part of who you are. And that's something that I actually do speak about a lot. Like I think that when you watch someone's work, you can sort of tell a little bit about them if it's honest. And I think that honest, there's something to say about honest work, about like really work that is not just being copied, but it's like it comes from within. It's kind of like who you are. And there's a sort of like connection that you find to that. I don't even know if there's words to describe it, but I really feel like, people connect to, it's kind of like, it's like a performer, right? There's someone who could learn the steps to a dance, and then there's someone who actually performs the dance. And that comes from like within. Same thing with musicians, right? They're like, you could learn how to play an instrument, but then there's like, you'll see a musician that their whole body is like the instrument. You know what I mean? It's just, it comes from within. And I think that there's a lot to say about that. Once you find that, it comes out in your work, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's an element of creativity that all creatives are, I think, aware of and striving towards, like the X factor, the je ne sais quoi, like the unpoint-outable element that just separates okay work and great work, or, empty work and authentic work. There's just something that you can't quite put your finger on, but yeah, like there's
like
ticking the boxes, and then there's it's a feeling. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and listen, there's people in the industry that kind of like, they're it's a money making thing. It's just it's you want to get paid and go home, and that's fine too. Not everybody's desire is to kind of, for wedding videos is, I mean, I know that's not what we're speaking about here, but there's nothing wrong with that either. It's kind of like, yeah.
Because that's all a sliding scale too of how much importance you put on that, of being an auteur versus like this is your job, and you just like it's just a wedding video or whatever. You can balance those priorities as much as you personally need to. It's not kind of a one or the other kind of thing. Everyone kind of figures out their own priorities in those relative areas. but there was, I guess, one question regarding to this I would love to put to you, because I agree that in today's world, there's creativity everywhere. There's no end to like where you can find creativity. It's, I guess, around curating those inspirations and figuring out what ones you want to take into your own work. And because I'm someone who like is like finds inspiration everywhere, and I want to take everything, and I'm excited by everything. But in regards to your work, because you're someone who like many of the creatives that I look up to, someone who seems to be in charge of their vision, and it's a vision that is like always evolving, but at the same time it's still a consistent voice. And that's something that I often struggle with around, like, I want to try all these different things, but they often come at the detriment of the consistency of my creative voice. So how do you decide what to kind of experiment with and where to stick to your, I guess, lane, for one of a better word, in terms of keeping the consistency of your style of filmmaking?
Yeah, so that's another thing. I mean, like, so once you actually have a brand and a style that's like something that I feel like for us is very distinct, and we have a distinct couple, because our work is not for everybody, that's for sure. It's not for the masses, it's definitely for a very specific couple. And for those couples that love our work, we are important to them. They love our work. And that's where, like, a lot of people, like, they'll rebrand, people will rebrand and stuff. Like, I find that for us, it's not an easy thing to do. I always use this example. Every season, Louboutin comes out with a new shoe, but there's always the red bottom. And that's how you know that there's Louboutins, right? So, like, if Louboutin all of a sudden decided to come out with a shoe that doesn't have a red bottom, you wouldn't know that they're Louboutins. And that's kind of like, they will lose a very big percentage of, like, of people that are interested in their shoe, like people that love their shoes or collect their shoes or would pay any kind of money for that shoe. So if you have a vibe, a brand that we've had for years, it's not so easy for us to, like, what, we did a wedding a few years ago, and it was an Indian wedding, and I asked Jack to bring his Ronin, and he brought the Ronin for the Barat. And literally within like minutes of me posting it, I get called out for movement in my oh, is that movement I see? It's almost kind of like people are disappointed now to see movement in our videos, So yeah, I do love movement, and I am incorporating a little bit, but I have to do it in bits, in tiny, kind of like where you just can't really.
Drip feed it.
Yeah, you have to sort of like baby steps, kind of like, you know what I mean, where people aren't really feeling this, like, oh, they sold out, or
sold out.
yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic analogy, the red bottom shoe, because it's the kind of thing where, like, yeah, the designers at Louboutin may like really want to do a shoe with a gold bottom or a black bottom, but Louboutin is the red bottom shoe. And I think for you guys too, like, yeah, you probably have those urges to like get excited and pull out the Ronin, but you guys have your red bottom, you've got your brand that people recognize you for, and that is something, yeah, I guess people are expecting to see, and is, I guess, a reason to why people would want to work with you.
Yep. So, and then there's the aspect of the couple, though, because does the couple care that we're using Ronin? Our couples probably don't even notice that we're not using any gimbals. We actually do get, we don't really do drone a lot, but we do get some requests for drone. And of course, drone is amazing in the right areas, like here in urban areas. Like, I'm not going to fly a drone over a parking lot, you know what I mean, just to say we're flying a drone. So we started this year, which I have not posted yet, baby steps, started incorporating a little bit of drone, but now wanted to make it our own. So I don't know, like, if you would like to edit this out or not, if
I'm
I should
intrigued.
really be announcing this, but yeah. So I asked our shooter, hey, listen, I want to do drone, but I still want to make it like what we do. I don't want it to all of a sudden like, oh, Fiore Films is doing drone. So can you just hover? Just hover.
Awesome.
Just want to
Yeah.
see, maybe show a little bit of the rays, kind of like a crane, or just tilt down. No flying,
Sick.
none of
Sick.
that.
Yeah.
Because for us, it's not what we do. So try
Yeah.
to make it, if we're doing drone, try to make it what we do, keep it to like our style, to what we do. So I thought that was kind of, keep it on brand.
I was so hoping just then that you were going to say a drone shot just static in the air, because I'm like, well, that's like, and even just then when you were saying it, I was like, why haven't I thought to do this before? This is amazing.
Yeah, so maybe cut that out, because now all of a sudden, we're letting secrets out.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is like everyone's going, because everyone's going the other way. Everyone's going to like FPV and like faster the better and like all here and through and everywhere. Fucking mental.
Which is awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah,
That's because like, flying over water, or flying over, over like a reveal over a mountain or something, like that's amazing.
But I think it makes the opposite even more refreshing. I think, like
Maybe, yeah. I think if it's done right, if it's edited properly, if it's done right, we'll see. But yeah, so that's maybe just kind of like, just kind of going it like a drip through the gates, kind of thing. But something where it's not your typical drone movement, which again, there's nothing wrong with that drone. I mean, you see it in Hollywood, you see drones, gimbals, sliders, all movement is intentional, and there is a place for those things.
100%.
And those are amazing tools. But again, like, our brand we kind of have to like, okay, maybe change things up a little bit, but kind of stick to our red bottom,
I think that's like a really good point, and something just like resonated with me just then, is that like we always think that we need to buy new gear to open up creative possibilities for like new ways of shooting or approaching our craft. But like, man, you can do so much just by reimagining what's possible with the stuff that you already have. And I'm probably like going to get hated on by Sony and gimbal manufacturers and drone manufacturers for saying that sort of thing. It's not very, capitalist of me, but there's so much you can do with gear that you haven't even thought to do yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, even us, I'm always trying to like think of like, oh, what can we do different this year? This season, what can we do to like change things up a little bit? Just to kind of like, just bring in a new, like just like a new little, sprinkle of a new ingredient, and that's another thing I always say, like we're all baking a cake, right? We all have the same ingredients: flour, eggs, water. But like, now what are those what are those additional things that you're putting into that cake that makes it taste better than the other bakery down the road? You know what I mean? And then sometimes, and I always say this too, that sometimes we are missing an ingredient. There's something, and in a wedding day, you're missing an ingredient, and you have to figure out how to make that cake like without that ingredient. You have to be creative and work around that missing, if I don't have eggs, so what can I use to like, replace eggs to make a cake?
Gluten-free cakes can still be good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. No, that's again with the awesome analogies. I think it just speaks to like having a holistic control over your craft and like understanding all the different elements, understanding all the different ingredients, and knowing what to do when one of those is missing. Because I think like, you go into a wedding day and you just try and go on based on what you used to, and you're like going off your kind of not autopilot, but you've you're getting whatever you need, but then sometimes you do miss something, and it's like, shit, what do I do with that now? But yeah, understanding how all the different elements all play into each other just means you can deal with scenarios that come up, because
I mean, it's a live event. There's things that happen, with every single wedding, even like ours, our weddings, like and I always say this on a wedding day, no offense to our couples, but I always say it's always something. There's always something, or with the toasts, there's always one that can't like stay in the light, where we took 20 minutes to set up the lights. There's always something. It's a live event. So, I think, like, to our credit, and I'm not just saying ours as in Fiore Films, I think to everyone in this industry, not everyone can do what we do. Not everyone can handle what we handle. It is a lot. It is a humongous responsibility. It is a humongous challenge. It's very intense on the mind and the body. And especially when you're trying to do something, come out with something special, not just a video, but you're trying to come out with something special. It's just, if it's something that didn't come out right, the cake like kind of like didn't come out straight, right? You got to fucking fix it with frosting, like in post. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely.
All I'm taking from this episode is fix it in post. Grace will love it.
Now everybody's going to be dying for cake now. I know I
am. There was one element that you mentioned briefly there that there's on my list to talk to you about, and I definitely want to cover it before we sort of start to wrap things up. And that is the element of lighting in your work, because you often are like I would like describe your work as just like measured and controlled, and that's often to do with like how you're directing your couples and the things you're choosing that are in your frame and out of your frame and stuff. But one of those elements is lighting, and that kind of like chiaroscuro, quote unquote moody lighting that is not the easiest thing to control and to use and to capture. So how are you guys approaching lighting on the day? How much are you controlling? How much are you just using what's around you to kind of get that consistent kind of moody, high contrast look that you guys have?
So in the beginning of the day, we really, really do our best to go with natural lighting. It's funny because a videographer, another friend of ours, like in the industry, sent me a screen grab, or he sent me something. I don't remember what it was, a screen grab. And we're like, whatever it was that he wrote, I don't remember exactly what it was. I'm like, wait, no, that's a window. That's not light. Like we didn't use light for that, And he was shocked. So I don't know why, but yeah. So for us, we really try to work with natural lighting, and for reception, we already know like where we're going to put the lights. We're going to put, one light as like a backlight, one light as sort of like a front-ish light, we don't, not straight ahead, not straight in front. And what we do is we actually try to approach the person who's speaking before they get on the floor and say, can you please do us a favor and just stand right there so that you're in the light? I'm not going to lie, there's always one that doesn't. And so we have to work around that in post. Our couples get a documentary edit of their day. So they get their whole day, their major moments of their day in full. They get their the ceremony, their first dance, the parent dances, and the speeches. They get that in full. Whether the person is not in proper light or is in proper light, they're getting their actual day in full. That's just how it's their day. But for our creative edit, I'm going to do my best to work around those things that are not properly lit or that are not properly composed, that are not, that the audio sounds bad. If there's something distracting in the shot, By the way, I don't think I didn't answer your question about movement. before regarding how we get our movement. If it's something in portraits where I like to work with the photographer, we like to work with the photographer rather than have our own time, because if for us, like, it burns out the couple. The couple's kind of like already done. Once they're done with the photographer, they're like, oh, we got to do this. You know what I mean? We do our best to just, like, whatever the photographer is doing, we just need slight movement for us, for our style, for us. You know what I mean? It's not going to work for everybody. But for what we do, I just need the bride to look up at the groom, or the groom to look down at the bride. Like, that's enough movement. If the photographer is having the couple walk, great. For us, because we're static, it's usually easier when they're not walking, when there's some sort of movement in where our cameras are pointing. But yeah, so that's basically, and we also let the camera roll. So once they're done with the actual, like, shot, when the photographer's like, okay, great, and the photographer hopefully is not running into the shot right away, those are some magical moments. The in-between moments, in between when things are happening. If a bride is reading her letter, I always let the camera roll when she's done. I don't stop the camera. I let it roll, and I let it roll for a good amount of time. Or same thing with the groom. When the groom is done reading his letter, which, if they're doing a letter, if they do cards, if they do whatever, I like to let that camera roll, because those in-between moments is where you find those little golden nuggets,
That is a fantastic point, and that's something I figured out and picked up a few years ago around, because you do have this psychological habit or reflex to, whenever the photographer's done with their directing and they drop their camera, there's like a reflex for you to drop your camera too, and like you sort of like, now's the time to stop filming. Whereas if you can untrain that muscle memory and keep your shot held and keep it recording, that moment just after they stop and the couple relaxes and they laugh or they something, like that is the moment for video for you to get that a little bit extra. I definitely remember that being a little aha moment a few years ago, going, if I don't like copy exactly what the photographer's doing, like in terms of like when they drop their camera, I don't drop mine, I keep mine going, you can get something different. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, even if the photographer's in the shot, sometimes I actually love, like, if I like shooting, I like using the photographer as foreground, because, like, for us, for the video, it makes sense that the photographer is shooting them. It's their wedding day, so it is part of their day. And photographers look cool when they're shooting. We don't look. I mean, you guys do. You're handheld. You guys look cool. We don't look so cool on sticks. You know what I mean? But yeah, photographers are badass. Like they look cool shooting a couple, and so that is also a good good movement and good storytelling, I think. It's a part of their day. They're like they're like celebrities on their day, so we like shooting that stuff too. Yeah.
And that's something that's so cool, because it's something that usually we'd be like, oh, we can't, it's ruined the shot, that's not what we want. But it's in context. You're right, it's totally in context. And if you own it instead of trying to hide it, it just becomes something that's really cool.
Oh yeah, actually I'm editing a piece now where the photographer was like lifting the bride's veil, and I was actually tight on the bride's face, and her veil's being lifted, and her reaction to the photographer was like amazing. So you know what I mean? Like, we're shooting that, and then the photographer's camera gets in my shot, but I use that as a transition. It's, stuff like that is like, it's awesome. It's and that's kind of like thinking outside the box. Sometimes we like, when like people walk by our camera and they duck, I'm like, no, walk by.
I know that's such a pet peeve. Like if people just act normal, walk past your camera,
now you ruined the shot.
It's the look, and then like the hustle or the backing out, the old fucking like back out of the frame. Yeah, that. I'm like, if you just keep walking, honey, it'd be so much better. Yeah. You're an extra in this movie. Just keep it walking.
Yeah, or a transition.
Yeah, you're a transition. Andrew, my friend, I've got a couple of questions left. Is there anything else burning on your question list that you have, Sharrone, before I start to land the plane?
Just one, which is a bit of a universal one that I'm sort of dealing with myself a lot lately. And the longer our career goes, it becomes something I'm more interested in. And that's like, how do you maintain a work-life balance and longevity? Because, you know, this is, like you touched on before, not everyone can do what we do as wedding filmmakers. And it isn't easy. And a lot of people will never understand. Like, mum still asks me, how's the wedding photography going? You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, how do you maintain that work-life balance and longevity and still have a passion for your craft and a life?
I mean, it's tough. It's really tough, you know, especially as a mom. It's tough because for what, you know, we're shooting on the weekends, we're editing during the week. It's really, really hard. And like I said, you know, this year really got me. This was our busiest, craziest season, for obvious reasons. And, you know, I think it got us all like thinking, which isn't a bad thing, but it's one of those things like, oh my God, how long can I do this? How long can I keep doing this? And especially for parents, it's like I'm missing my kids' like life. I'm missing their games. I'm missing, you know, just sitting down watching a movie with them. You know, so I think that I can answer that for myself right now because that's something for like, you know, everyone's going to have a different, you know, some people kind of like need time away from home. They, you know, that's kind of like their thing. They need it. They want it. And that's their escape. So for me personally, you know, I stopped working to be a stay-at-home mom, and now I'm working more than ever. So at this time, you know, I'm reflecting a lot, and that's because of like our times in life right now with us, and you know, in the past couple of years. And you know, you have to think like, is it worth it for you? Because again, like what we do in the style that we do it, and the longevity that we've done it for, and the consistency that we have, I feel like we have consistency in our work, and that's part of like what also makes us shine. It's a lot of work, and I miss a lot. I've missed a lot at home. I'm going to tell you guys something that not really a lot of people know, but like I edit in my kitchen. That's where I edit. I have an office that could have been, this office could have been mine up here, but I chose to have a nook in the kitchen because our kitchen is open to the family room. So at least I can see my family, you know what I mean? And I'm not like locked in a room. There's negatives to that because there's times I can't concentrate because I can't focus because other things are happening. But I've come to a point after this year personally that I'm like, how much longer can I do this? How much longer can, you know, I have to think about the future of, you know, Fiore Films. Like, how can this go on? And so we actually had a little baby sister over COVID, Fiore Flicks. And so Fiore Flicks is Fiore Films' little sister, and we're just getting the ball rolling. You know, we booked a few this year, and we're getting the ball rolling. So Fiore Flicks for us is what it's kind of like what an associate team would be for someone else, but it's not associate. It's still the Fiore Films family, but not me physically. I'm overseeing everything. And so this will allow me, Fiore Films, to be more exclusive again. And I can take way more few of Fiore Films and then be able to like have my extra time with Fiore Films without taking away as much from my life and let Fiore Flicks happen, you know what I mean, and oversee it. So it's still Fiore Flicks is not going to be a volume studio or anything like that. It's literally going to be like the vision for it is to be Fiore Films' little sister, you know? That took a lot of thinking and a lot of like exact the way that you asked the question, saying that, how do you find balance? How do you find like longevity? These were questions that I was asking myself over the past like couple of years, during the time off and then the time back, especially. It's going to work for me, but I've been doing this for so many years. I have never found balance. Never. I've missed a lot. I have never found balance. So I think it is a very, very difficult thing to do things at the level that we're doing them and the amount of things that we're doing and find balance. I don't mean to scare anybody away.
No.
I'm being honest. There are people that find balance. There are. I never did.
But I think that honesty is important because, like, in an age of Instagram where we, put our best lives out there and act like everything's hunky-dory, a lot of the time it's not. And I think it's a really hard profession to be in when things are going badly because you're in the business of happiness.
It is. It's very. I could tell you this though, that I don't understand how people have so much time for social media. You guys are amazing at what you do. And I guess it became part of my brand too, to be honest with you, is like, that's how I like why people call me unicorn, like that, because I'm never at things. I never Vision Quest was the only thing I've ever showed up at. And these things, it's part of the reason why I just wanted to be this to be audio too, because it's kind of like, my thing. But I still need to get on my YouTube game. I have been awful on Facebook. I am not that great with doing stories. I actually just hired Square Muse, to redo our website. And they are asking for things. And I'm like, can I get it to you after Christmas, like after the New Year? And, they need stuff. And I'm like, I can't find time. So again, I can't, I still cannot find balance, but to be honest with you, I am just now really making it a point to be here, like when my son asks me for he likes to go, to the store or whatever, that's his new thing. And so now I am dropping everything and I'm going, but then I don't find time, for my website. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
priorities. Yeah.
It's priorities, but there's the balance thing went out the window a long time ago for me,
But that's the thing. I think for a lot of it, I think for a lot of us it does. People who work for themselves, who are crafting their own careers and their own business, the balance does go out the window. But I think for us who've been in it for a while now, I'm coming up on 10 years. Andrew, I'm sure you're similar.
The same, yeah.
And I'm getting to the point now where I'm like, what's the end game? What's the long-term goal? What does my career look like when I'm 40, 50, 60, whatever, because the balance that I have now is not something that I can envision sustaining for decades more. And so I think a lot of us are now getting to the point in our careers where we're thinking, okay, what other types of work, with your little sister project, it's what are the other ways our business is going to evolve and develop over time to sustain our career for the long haul. We're all kind of figuring that out, I think.
What do you guys think about that? The Fiore flicks. Cute, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's great.
It's I think a lot of us have probably toyed with the idea of that kind of sister brand or that kind of thing where you've got your kind of, I guess, because as you progress in your career, you get higher and higher end, I guess, because you're just one person, and the only way to scale really is to kind of scale your pricing, and so you kind of just get into a different sort of market. But then it's how do you offer something, I guess, smaller for different couples that doesn't kind of not devalue what you do, but it's just a different way.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. it was something I was like thinking about. I know that a lot of like higher end, there was a time where a lot of higher end studios, they created a brand that was a more of like a volume studio sort of brand that had nothing to do with, the name or like you would never know. So I was toying with that idea with this Fiore Flicks thing for some time. Like, how I don't want it to be a like a lower end thing, but it's not going to be Fiore Films. You know what I mean? So how do I approach this? And I still am having trouble, kind of like I don't know, like I don't know regarding a website or an Instagram, like exactly how to like market it or how to like. I want it to take a life of its own eventually. I think this past couple of years really shed a lot of light on all of us. And this year, especially, I think a lot of us did like a lot of reflecting and thinking and sort of like also innovating, thinking, innovative thinking. I have friends that like, there's friends in the industry that opened up a pizza truck. It's amazing. Different passions, like people had different passions. They're like, you know what, I'm going to do it now. Like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, no, it has been interesting to see how everyone has been, like, whether they've been going sideways or up or out, or like how everyone's been dealing with approaching the challenges that we've been facing, and how they sort of, because everyone's, I think, been shocked into realizing the insecurity of their particular business format or structure, or people are going, I need to diversify, I need to expand, I need to solidify my systems, I need to work on my marketing, I need to like work on my networking. Everyone sort of realized the gaps or like the flaws in their system, I think, over the last few years. I mean, I know I have, but yeah, I think that's something that I did have a final question, but I kind of want to tweak it now in light of what we've just been talking about around like, what advice do you have for filmmakers? I guess, like, looking back at your time in the industry, what do you feel is most important for, I guess, just like maintaining or sustaining business like year in, year out?
Okay, so we're talking about like someone that like their goal is to have a brand, or if they have a brand, not necessarily for those studios that are kind of like, they're making ridiculous amount of money and they're just pushing edits out. So we're strict. I'm speaking to the studios that are more kind of like me. It's something, and it's something that it took me. There was a moment, and I remember exactly what it was, where I was like, I'm going to do what comes to me, and that was many years ago, and I never looked back since then. And I think that it is important to, whatever it is that you're feeling, go for it. Like, go for it in your shooting, go for it in the edit, go for it in your style. Because again, that goes back to like what we talked about. Like, when it comes from within, when it's like really who you are, and there's like an honestness about like what you're doing, people will connect to it better. For some reason, there's just that energy about it that the people, and like, you know what? And I've actually said this before. When it's a part of you that's in your work, like when it's really who you are in your work, people that are like you are going to connect to that work, because and you're going to have some similarities. You know what I mean? They're going to, because that's why they're attracted to it. They're attracted to what you're putting out there, which is like a part of you. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I'm putting it into the right words, but you get the gist, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, great. I think it is important. Like, that's my biggest advice, is to just say, I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and she was telling me that like this piece that she put out, she had a friend that told her that they didn't like the song, and like after she put it on, she's like, I like the song, I like the song, and I'm like, I love this music, you know what I mean? And you know what I mean? Not everybody's gonna like what you do. Like I know, and I always knew that this style, like what I do and what I put out there, is not going to be for everybody. And I completely accept that. As a matter of fact, when couples inquire with us and I ask who their photographer is, and I'm looking at the photographer's page and I look at our page and I see the photographer's page, like they're using, their whole page is white and our whole page is not. So I already know off the bat how that photographer's style and how they're working with light. And I actually, it's something that the couples don't always realize, and I bring it to their attention, you know? And so I feel like maybe we might not be a good match. It might be a challenging day for everyone, for the photographer, for us, and for the couple, because the photographer wants to turn them this way and we want to turn them that way, you know?
Yeah.
So it is important to know like who you are, who your couple is, and to be okay with it. If you're putting work out there that's part of like who you are, you will be okay with it, you know, because you could fake something else, but you know that you're not going to be good at it, you know, or you know that it's not going to be you, you know. That's big advice. I know that that's kind of like, it's not really something super specific, like use this lens.
Yeah. No, but it is specific in the sense of like being authentically you means you're not going to be fighting upstream, I guess, like always against couples that don't gel with you and you can't really figure out why. And if you're always making something that's authentically something that you like, if you're on board with it, chances are the people similar to you would also be on board with it.
Absolutely. My other piece of advice, I think that this one, it would be more specific, would be to, also not only stay true to you, but stay true to your couple, which means not every couple is going to be as sexy as you envisioned maybe on their day, or as silly as you envisioned on their day, or have this, some couples don't have, like, they're just not as comfortable in front of the camera, or there's a weird connection between them because they're getting so much attention, they're not used to having all these cameras in front of them, or whatever it is. And then you're going to put this dramatic music under these visuals that don't go, that's one of my things. I feel like there is sort of like manipulating a day in post. There's a way to manipulate things, but then there's a difference between manipulating and forcing. And like when something is forced, just because you love this song, or because this song is amazing, or you heard this song somewhere else and you're trying to like force this day and edit on a song, maybe rethink that. You know what I mean? That's one of my things. Like, I know, like, sometimes when I'm editing a piece and I'm just like, oh, this is just not, it's not something, it's not coming out right. But then I'll throw like I'm like, maybe it's the music. I'll throw a different song over it, and then it just all comes together, But yeah, I guess so. Like, right. So stay true to yourself, but also stay true to your couple. Let your couple determine maybe what you're shooting on, some parts of the day. Maybe how you're shooting. Definitely, the music that you choose and the edit. I think that's some solid advice right there,
That's great advice.
Because some people are just so, like, I know, sometimes there's nothing creative. I know that me, like, when I try to force something creative on a day that there's just like nothing creative to be had, I stress myself out and I have a terrible day shooting, a terrible shooting day. So if you just like, it's going to be one of those days where, like, okay, there's nothing creative, so I'm just going to document this day solid and compose maybe some interesting angles at most. It might not be a masterpiece, but things happen, I think, better when we're not forcing ourselves on it,
Yeah. That's
Agree.
great advice.
Agree. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Well, Sharrone, thank you so much for the last hour and a half of amazing wisdom and advice, and hearing your stories and hearing how you work. You know, I
Yeah,
think
it's been
both
incredible.
Andrew and I have been looking forward to this chat for a long time now. And you're one of these filmmakers who I agree with the label unicorn. Like, you don't come along very often, and you're one of these mystical beings that you sort of see on the internet and just sort of like look up to and just inspired by. Like, I think just
Absolutely.
the confidence, I think, is probably a word I would use to describe, like, the confidence in just like what you do, how you do it, and the whole execution of everything is just awesome, and just such a breath of fresh air for our industry. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Can I just say something though? Because again, like it's also about being real. So I'm not always confident, by the way. There are pieces that I've edited even that I'm just like, like, you know, I'll want to get someone's opinion on it. Do you love this? Is this post worthy? You know, sometimes when you're like like, especially me, I'm like, I think I told you this before we went on air. I'm an overthinker, and I know that about myself. It's also important to kind of like know your own strengths and weaknesses. I know I'm an overthinker. So yeah, no, I'm not always confident. I'm not always confident in my shots. I'm not always confident in my edits. You know, you had Tina Freehas on,
Yeah.
and I listened to that one, and she's one of my favorites, like people. And when I was listening to her, I'm like, she is my fucking twin. She's legit my twin. And I actually like made my husband like listen to a few things she said. I'm like, is this not me? Is this not me? And one of the things she said was that she's not the best shooter, but she knows how to put things together in a way that is a little manipulative, you know, but it's also not, it may be manipulative to like a person in the sense of like, oh man, this must be so easy for her. But she's also very true to what she's shooting and what she's editing. And I do the same thing. I am not the most amazing shooter. I don't always see things like I have days where I'm just like, I'm on point, where I'm just like feeling so creative, and I'm like, look at this, and look, let's do this. And, you know, and then there's days where I'm just like, I don't see it. I don't see anything. I don't know like what even to do right now, you know, creatively. So I think I really wanted to point that out, because I don't want people to think that like, you know, I mean, I think we're all very much alike in, you know, as artists. I'm going to call ourselves artists, right? As artists and business owners and filmmakers. We all have our insecurities. We all have our self-doubts. We all have our egos. We all have something to prove. Like, ego is a good thing, because that's what keeps you going. Just don't be a dick. You know, and I always say that. Don't be a dick about it. You know what I mean? There's a difference between having an ego and being egotistical, you know? But yeah, so I have my insecurities. I have very bad days. I have those days where it takes me, you know, 3 days to figure out the first 20 seconds of an edit, or just the opening of an edit. And we also have the same challenges. We're shooting live events, so we have the same challenges. As it doesn't matter if you're shooting a $10,000 wedding or a $2,000 wedding. It's a wedding. We may not have exactly the same challenges, but we do all have challenges, you know?
That's so important to hear for so many people.
Yeah. I think so too. I always make it a point to like, just be the like in your face kind of like, no, it's not all like Skittles and rainbows and nothing goes 100% right for us on a wedding day ever. Never. We've had days where we walk out and we're like, oh my God, that was such an amazing day. We totally deserve this. You know, like we earned this day, but there were still challenges on that day, you know? So yeah, I just, you know, everyone should know that, and everyone should own it, you know? I think
100%.
sometimes like sometimes the bigger, more exquisite weddings do have more challenges and a lot more pressure on that day. Like their expectations are going to be higher than those of like, I love our couples. Our couples are badass. Like I love our couples, like, and that's something too, where I'm so blessed, like that. And again, I really do feel that it's because of what we put out there. We attract the couples that are just fucking awesome. I mean, we have our challenges again, but like our typical couple is just like, no, I don't give a shit about makeup. I don't give a shit about like this. I don't give a shit about that, and that's because of what we put out there, I think, so if you, again, like that goes back to like staying true to like who you are, and then it'll come back to you. Oh, I have another piece of advice. Real quick.
Do it. Drop it.
You don't have to post everything.
Yes. Actually, this is, I think the point that, because I was going to sort of speak to what you were saying around your insecurities around like the fact that you don't feel confident, and similar to Monica, how she was saying like she doesn't feel like she's the best shooter, but she can like manipulate things. I think like a skill that you have is in curation. So I think that is a skill that shows itself in super consistent work. In the way that I look at Monica's work and it's super consistent, I look at your work and it's super consistent. I think your skill in curation speaks a lot to that, and it's definitely a skill that I struggle with. And definitely, it's definitely there's like an element of like manifesting creativity like in the moment when you're shooting, but then there's also a kind of like a skill in controlling through curation that I think you obviously are very well versed in as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm an editor first, definitely, and I've said this, that like a good editor is an illusionist. So you're never going to see the shit that I've shot. Like you're never going to see the garbage ever. You're also never going to see like, things that there's things that I don't post that I feel like, there is a consistency. Everything that I send out, I've given it my all to like make it amazing as possible. And, for our couples, every single piece that I put out, whether it's posted or not, I'm spending that time on. But what you post is your marketing. So what you put out there. So even something so simple as, for us personally in our industry, a particular venue. If it's a venue that you don't like to drive to, or you don't like to shoot at, or doesn't really kind of jive with what you normally do, but you have an amazing couple, that's, even if the day is amazing, maybe don't post it, because people will will see that venue and be, they'll connect to it because that's the venue that they're getting married at, or that's the venue that they were looking at. So even something as simple as that, have to like really, really think that through. That's a marketing thing, That's not just like, oh, this day was garbage. Like none of our days are garbage. Please don't like delete that part. Even if the day even if the day wasn't the greatest.
Yeah, but I think it speaks to that, like people describe it as like kill your darlings around, like, even if it is like a great day and you might love the film, but in terms of the holistic big picture thing of what you're putting out, how is it actually like serving how you want to move your business forward? Just because you love the film, is it like gonna serve you to put it out? So I think that again, it comes with a lot of discipline to make those decisions. Yeah,
I have a wedding that we've done that is probably one of my favorite pieces. Like the party was amazing, it was amazing, but there's parts of that day that the venue, specifically the venue, that, you know, it's not really like, it's not really part of our brand. If I'm going to say it like, you know, bluntly, it's really not like, it's not the area where we like to market. It's not the type of venue that I like. I personally love places that are like, that have like architecture, like the, you know, like, you know, old mansions, history, like stuff like that. So, you know, for me personally, there's certain places or certain maybe parts, you know, things that of the day that I don't want to put that out there as what we do. I don't know, like, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
No, it totally does. It totally does. Yeah, yeah. No, I do the same. I'm sure all of us, to some extent, like do that. Where, yeah, you're just controlling what you want to be put out there, and just because you shoot the wedding doesn't mean you post the wedding, I think.
Exactly. Right. I think that is some serious discipline for me, especially that one piece that I was just talking about. Like, there's still days where I'm like, oh, should I post it? But yeah, no. Speaking specifically marketing wise, it's a bad idea to post.
Good advice. Very good.
You'll
good
cut
advice
that down and make a long story short, right?
No. We're
that was kind of sloppy, but
no.
That was great. That was good advice.
I'm gonna wrap it up for the listeners real quick, but yeah, thank you everyone for listening and tuning in. Bit of a long one, but I'm sure you guys enjoyed. It's fantastic, and yeah, thanks Sharrone, thanks Andrew,
thank you guys so much. Thank you.
We'll see you all.
Andrew
next
could
time.
go back to sleep now.
Yeah.